Hey guys, what's good? It's the Tominator, and we got another throwback review for you here. This one wasn't from that long ago, but it already is coming up on 10 years now. Hard to believe. But this was the 2011 Sheru Classic. So this show took place over in India just 1 week after the 2011 Mr. Olympia. And in a way, it was arguably a more competitive contest. This is because Greene was a little more conditioned and Phil wasn't quite as razor sharp. Jay stayed more or less the same, so the gap had closed between the top three. Victor Martinnez in fourth also looked sensational. Dennis Wolf came in fifth, so this was basically Mr. Olympia round 2. The reason for the provocative title is because I feel after going back and reviewing all these photos that Greene sorta got the short end of the stick. Not saying he deserved to win, but I would have definitely had him in second over Jay. But I think being just 1 week after the Olympia, the judges and contest promoters didn't want to rock the boat too much and just kind of played it safe, sticking with the same placings as they had in the Olympia. But anyway, here in the front relaxed, I like all three of them. Phil was never that well suited to this one with his more narrow frame, though he does show some good definition through the abs and his customary roundness in the arms and shoulders. The only real weakness is the lack of width, because otherwise he looks great and sharp as a tack. Between Jay and then, I prefer Jay's legs here. Those quads and calves are just money from the front. The lats and rib cage look big and full also, but the pecs are pretty thin and the shoulders could use a little more cap. Oddly enough, given that Jay's shoulders were normally a strong point for him. Looks much better through the pecs and delts, but his midsection and legs aren't as sharp. So overall, I'd probably give this one to Cutler, but there is an argument for any one of these guys. It's very close. The side relaxed has got to go to either Phil or though. They both look a lot thicker and fuller than Jay here. Kai's chest and hamstrings in particular look totally crazy right now. Phil's obliques, shoulders, triceps, and quads are on point, but the light is just hitting Kai perfectly and really drawing my eye. So yeah, let's tentatively put Kai ahead here, but we'll see if that holds up when they turn to the other side. From the rear, it's clear as day that Phil was on another level conditioning-wise. He was peeled through the glutes and hams, and that back was crisp and hard. Kai is comparable through the lower body, but his back was considerably softer, and just can't match Phil's thickness through the traps. Jay looks surprisingly small up top. Not sure if this was taken at an inopportune moment, but he looks no wider than Phil now. I'd probably put him fourth behind Dennis Wolf over there on the right. And from the other side, Phil and Kai both still look great. It's honestly tough to choose. Kai's got a little more mass, but Phil's got a little more detail. I'm also really digging his stance right here. It looks a lot more confident and frankly aesthetic than Kai's more reserved style. Greene, more reserved in a pose for once. Go figure. So yeah, I'd probably give Phil the nod and the side relaxed. Kai is a close second and Jay is third. But on to the mandatories, and here in the front double, we've also got Victor Martinnez over there on the right. Not at his all-time best, but he wasn't far off the mark. Just look at those guns. I'm seeing shades of Nasser El Somebody with those biceps, guys. He's also showing the cleanest lat taper here. Unfortunately, the legs aren't up to par with the others, so that pretty much drops him to fourth automatically. Jay looks big and powerful. Once again, I love his wheels from the front, and the arms also look huge and full. But his waist is fairly wide and blocky, and that knocks him down a peg. Phil brings that crazy roundness and the best arms in the picture when you account for the forearms and all of that biceps separation. He's super balanced, but if we're being honest, he's given up a fair bit of size compared to the rest of them. The midsection and legs also don't look fully flexed, so that's hurting him here. Kai was an absolute beast at this show. You can see why they called him the Predator. He's not as conditioned as Phil or even Jay, but holy crap, did he ever bring the mass. The bis and tris are enormous, the chest and delts are thick as hell, the wheels are better than Phil's from the front, and second only to Jay's. Victor looks great too. I don't want to overlook him because he's probably got the best upper body in the frame, but the legs let him down, and I can't reward that. Here's another picture from the finals where Phil looks a little stronger. In fact, I think he wins it now. I wasn't sure who to go with in that first pick, but this kind of seals the deal for me. The abs and quads are displaying more definition, and from this lower angle, the lat sweep is more pronounced. Jay also looks improved. Their conditioning becomes more apparent the closer you zoom in, and Jay was clearly sharper than Kai through the torso and legs. Kai still packs the most size and volume, but I don't think it's enough. He looks too soft standing next to these two. So I would have to put him in third here, with Phil in first and Jay in second. But either way, it's pretty close. You could honestly make a case for any one of them. In the lat spread, this is tough because the angle is off for Kai and favoring Jay, who's standing closest to the camera. Phil's definitely the driest and looks pretty aesthetic right now. This is probably one of the best front lat spreads he ever hit. But his narrow clavicles and rounded pecs simply aren't flattering in this pose. I would probably put Cutler on top here because he's super wide, the pecs look uncharacteristically dense for him, and those quads simply cannot be matched. They're so deeply diced and separated. Kai might have a little more outer sweep and can certainly hang with Jay size-wise, but not in terms of quality. Greene's arms and lats also appear shockingly thin right now. Like I said, the angle isn't doing him any favors, but based on this look, I'd have to relegate him to third, even though 9 times out of 10, he's beating Phil in this pose. In the side chest, though, Kai storms back with a vengeance. This is devastating, demoralizing stuff. He crushes Jay here. The pecs, the side leg, even the delt and triceps are all bigger and better on Kai. Now, people will complain about his gut, but really, it's not that noticeable unless you zero in on it. He's doing a pretty good job hiding it, and furthermore, it's not even protruding as much as you think on first glance, because he's pitching his upper body forward a little, and that's causing the stomach to stick out more. So partly, it's just his unorthodox posing technique to blame, and not excusing the distension, because there is some of that, but just saying it's not a deal breaker in my book. As for Cutler, his hamstrings and pecs are way too flat, and even his arms don't look very impressive right now. I would actually have Victor beating him here. Fuller pecs and more sweep front to back through the thighs. Phil is super complete with amazing roundness, but Kai is just like 25% bigger and basically matching him on detail now. Here's a closer look that's a little kinder to Jay. He looks better through the arms, but those legs, especially the hamstrings, still aren't cutting it. We all know Jay's quads from the front are unstoppable, but from the side, he lacks volume. You can see now that Phil retains the edge in conditioning, with the most striated glutes, separated shoulders, and defined obliques. I also prefer the way he hits it versus Kai, who leans over more and sticks out his butt, but even so, I think Kai was simply too massive for him in this shot, and close enough in terms of conditioning that he pulls it off. Just compare their shoulders and legs. In the back double, this is Phil Heath's bread and butter, but I'll tell you what, he's being given a run for his money right now. Of course, on his own, Phil is untouchable. He has no weaknesses in this pose. But when you're the smallest guy in the call-out, you've got to be that much sharper, that much more complete, and that much better to stay on top. He's still beating Jay, who looks great downstairs, but in terms of the upper body, his back can't hold a candle to Phil's. Jay's lats look pretty high in this shot, and there's just not much detail or taper compared to the others. Victor looks terrific, however. Awesome taper and biceps, and even his legs look pretty damn good from the back. Does he have the dryness or detail of Phil? No, but structurally, he's better. Kai is really pushing him, though. Extraordinary thickness all over, the back, the biceps, glutes, hamstrings. Hell, even the calves are all the most muscular in the lineup. However, his conditioning wasn't quite there. The striations and cuts are slightly faded, and it makes him look a little unfinished. For that reason, I would still tentatively keep Phil in the lead, even though at first glance it might seem like he's getting outsized too badly. Here at the finals, it's clear that Jay is last. His back just looks sort of worn, sort of atrophied through that lower half. Those lats seem to have receded somewhat with age, and despite some really solid conditioning, the skin looks a little loose and thick. This raisin skin phenomenon tends to happen as you get older, and Jay was almost at the end of his career by this point. So now, between Kai and Phil, it could go two ways. If you're a stickler for conditioning, it's an easy victory for Phil. He was the most ripped by a mile, and you can see that clearly in the lower body. But he also looks uncharacteristically flat, and I mean, come on, Kai is dwarfing him here. Look at the difference in their biceps. Look at how much more meat he's packing through the lats, or even in the legs. Kai's quad sweep from the back is nuts. Phil might have the edge in conditioning, but Kai is destroying him in terms of muscle mass. So for that reason, I'm going to change my mind and give this one to Kai. Controversial call, I know, but this is a muscle contest last I checked, not a who's got the most striated butt contest. In the rear lat spread, again I'm going with Kai for pretty much the same reason. Way too much mass and thickness, and the best lower body from the rear, even if his conditioning was half a step behind. I would actually put Victor ahead of Phil in this shot too. He's showing a lot more width upstairs and a similar level of detail through the back. This is a pose that took Phil a couple more years to bring up and fill out properly. By, say, 2013, he'd done that, but at the start of his reign, he was still vulnerable in it. Jay has got to be last since he doesn't have much of a V-taper to speak of. His lower body looks good, but not as strong as Kai's or Phil's. In the finals. Okay, I'm not too crazy about Kai now. His back looks kinda squat and squarish, but that's because he's already transitioning out. There were other photos available showing that he opened up earlier than the others, and Jay took a while to get into it, so that's why it looks a little crappy for Kai here. In any case, the legs are still crazy though, even besting Phil's now. From this angle, Jay's lats seem to flare out a lot more, but it looks somewhat asymmetrical. That right one is way more pronounced than the left. Could just be a trick of the angle though, so I'm not going to read into that too much. This photo is really apples and oranges. Phil has the best shape and conditioning, Kai has the best lower body, and Jay suddenly looks the biggest and widest. Honestly, I'm going to do a total 180 and put Jay on top now. And this just goes to show how misleading individual pictures can be. Depending on camera angle and who's fully locked in versus who isn't, opinions can change at the drop of a dime. Here's one last look proving my point about Kai. And I think when he's fully flexed and opened up, he makes Phil look small and takes this shot. The side tricep is thankfully a lot more straightforward. Phil wins this easily. The best triceps in the lineup hands down. And coupled with those world-class delts, and at this point in time, a streamlined midsection and spot-on aesthetics, this is money in the bag for him. Jay also looks quite aesthetic. He's always had a knack for hitting a photogenic side triceps, and this year was no different. With the chiseled abs, square chest, the massive arm, and that elegant little tilt he does, this is a great shot for him. Kai and Victor look a little more awkward, but to be fair, Martinnez might have been transitioning. As for the top three, you can now note some nice feathering in Kai's triceps, and he inches closer to Jay, but I'd still have Phil soundly in the lead, with Cutler second and Greene in third. The ab and thigh probably has to go to Kai, with those feathered quads and the nicely developed six-pack. Jay's ab and thigh was formerly a phenomenal pose for him, like back in 2001 when he pushed Ronnie Coleman to the brink. But by this later stage in his career, the waistline had grown way too thick, and it just doesn't flow that well anymore. Victor isn't fully flexed, but as we saw in the front double, he's way too top-heavy. This sort of reminds me of like a more aesthetic version of Justin Rodriguez. Even Phil doesn't look too great right now. Sure, there's no bubble gut, but the obliques are spilling over on his left side there, and the thighs could use a bit more separation. Still, it's good enough for second place in this call-out. This next photo is markedly better for Heath, whose midsection now looks tiny and shredded. He's pretty aesthetic and might even overtake Greene due to his superior conditioning, but nah, overall I'm gonna stick with Kai. His abs are still nicer formed compared to Phil's 4-pack, he's wider up top and maintains the lower body advantage. Jay has also improved here with a slimmer looking waistline than the first photo, but he remains the blockiest of the three and therefore winds up in third. Finally, when it comes to the most muscular, we've got a couple different shots to analyze. This first one was from prejudging, and it shows Phil and Jay in the hand on hip, and frankly, Phil is crushing him with those powerful guns. Jay's only advantage is his wider chest and quads, but his waist is once again looking pretty blocky, and the triceps and forearms can't hope to measure up to Phil's. Victor's upright crab looks impressive through the upper body, but he needs to flex his legs harder to bring out some details in the quads. He also looks narrow now, even standing next to Phil, which is never a good sign. Kai looks too smooth here, especially through the midsection and thighs. I would definitely have Phil winning this comparison. In the crab, once again, it's Phil for me all the way. His only real flaw is the narrow frame, but those delts and arms are just too overpowering. Even the pecs, despite their lack of width, are insanely thick from top to bottom. Victor also looks great here. Structurally, he's got that width factor that Phil is missing, but unfortunately he doesn't have the same elite shoulders, and I don't like his traps as much either. His midsection is also thicker here, and the legs aren't as good, so overall, Phil is beating him pretty easily in this shot. And Jay is getting owned even worse. Sure, the legs are still great, and I like his traps, but the arms look way too small, especially next to that large midsection. Phil is killing them here. And here's one last look from the finals. This doesn't tell us much, since Phil hasn't hit it yet, and it looks to be in more of a front relaxed position, but I just wanted to show Jay from a slightly better angle, and Kai over there hitting what I believe is his most effective, most muscular variation. This hands clasped is a thing of beauty. He looks incredible right now. But yeah, of course, Phil is taking the most muscular still. That's not even up for debate. So in the end, do I feel that Heath deserved it, despite giving up a lot of size to some of these other guys? Yes, I think that's fair to say. His conditioning was the best by far, and even though there were some close calls and he lost a couple poses, he still dominated certain shots and was a close second in most of the others. Plus, he won the symmetry round pretty convincingly. That said, do I feel Jay deserved his second place finish? No, I don't think he did. In my opinion, this was perhaps laziness on the part of the judges, even something of a gift for the former 4-time Mr. O. Jay might have outconditioned Kai, but that doesn't mean he was better on the whole. Kai was definitely beating him in the side chest, back double, ab and thigh, and I would also argue the rear lat spread, most muscular, and possibly the front double as well. So there's like 5 or 6 out of 8. Kai had the more dominant back and legs when we factor in the glutes and hamstrings from the side and rear. So yeah, I don't agree with that decision whatsoever. And if we look at the scorecard, it appears that only one of the 5 judges had Kai in second. But hey, what can you do? It's all water under the bridge at this point, but that's just my 2 cents on the matter. What about you guys, though? Would you agree that Kai should have placed ahead of Jay? For that matter, did Phil even deserve to win this show? I still think he probably did, but there's certainly an argument to be made for Kai this time. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Hope you enjoyed this little throwback review, and if so, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Until next time, it's the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.